Jamie didn't choose the coast. His mom sent him here. Somewhere quiet, somewhere you can breathe. But the sea had other plans. He met Sam, a boy who moves with the tide, with salt in his hair and something unspoken in his eyes. Then came the letter, a page that had waited decades to be found, signed only with a mark, 2 waves, side by side, a promise from someone long gone. In their search for answers, Jamie and Sam found more than they expected. A kiss neither planned, and the first crack in the silence around Jamie's great uncle. That mark is about to take them further than they ever gone. Back to a different Cornwall, the summer of 1960. 2 boys. One love story no one dared speak of, until now. This is Shoreline Secrets, Chapter 5. 2 waves, 1 tide. The morning was pale, cold enough to keep their hands deep in their sleeves. Jamie's board was heavier than Sam's, wood instead of foam, salt still clinging in the grain. He shifted it under his arm. Fingers tapped the nose. 2 waves, side by side. Sam saw it before Jamie spoke. Stopped walking. "It's the same," he said. Jamie's eyes stayed on the mark. "It is." A gull crossed the sky. The sound fell further than it was. They were supposed to be in the water, lesson starting soon. But the pull was here. "Surf can wait," Sam said. Jamie nodded once. Jamie turned his head toward the cliff. Sam followed. The cottage stood above the waterline, white walls catching the pale light, roof dark from last night's rain. On the porch, a man stood, still watching. Jamie's fingers tightened on the board, the mark under his hand. From high on the porch, Jamie's great uncle watched the shoreline. The boys were shapes against the pale sand. Jamie's board was different, older, wood worn smooth, edges softened by years. Even from here, he knew where the mark was. 2 waves, side by side. His breast caught. He had run his fingers over that same mark before, long before. The wind shifted. Salt carried up the cliff. Jamie's voice, caught in the air, folded into another, a laugh he hadn't heard in years. The beach below blurred. Sam's outline, Jamie's stance, fading into shape he remembered. "Edward," Arthur's voice carried over the tide, full of salt and sun. Edward turned, just in time for Arthur to close the space between them. A big hug, arms tight, words knocking lightly together. Arthur laughed into his shoulder, breast warm against his ear. They pulled back just enough to see each other, both smiling. Arthur set his board down first. Edward followed, laying the nose just above the tide's reach. Arthur's fingers found the mark, traced the twin lines cut into the wood. 2 waves, side by side. Arthur tilted his head toward the sea. "Waves are small today. Perfect for you to finally beat me." Edward smirked. "Perfect for you to stop pretending you're better." Arthur laughed, deep and easy. "Come on then." They waded in, water curling cold around their ankles. The boards rolled low in the shallows. Paint faded in places, edges dulled by years of salt. Arthur pedaled first, Edward following just behind. A small set rolled in. Arthur glanced back, grinning. "This one's ours." They caught it together. The wave carried them in side by side, close enough for their shoulders to brush. They let the board slide up the wet sand, collapse beside them, breathing hard. Arthur's hand stayed on Edward's arm longer than needed. The only sound was the tide breathing in and out. Edward turned his head, looked at him. Wreathy looked. Salt on his lashes, sun on his cheek, breath still fast from the wave. Arthur met his eyes, didn't look away. Edward's chest rose, Arthur's fell, then the other way around. A rhythm that felt like it could go on forever. Arthur picked up his board. Edward did the same. They walked back along the sand, boards on their arms. Arthur said something, low just for him. Edward's mouth lifted in a half-smile. From the porch above, an older Edward stood still, watching the boys in his memory. The shapes overlapped. Arthur's laugh and Sam's smile. His own younger stance and Jamie's. 2 pairs, 2 summers. The wind pulled at the grass. The sea moved the same as it always had. Jamie and Sam moved along the same stretch, boards on their arms. The older board's nose resting in Jamie's palm, right where the mark was carved. The sand here was firm, holding each step in shallow prints. Sam glanced at Jamie's hand, then at his face. "We'll go to mine first," he said. "Pick up the letter." Jamie nodded. They didn't hurry. The boards were heavy. The path to the road was longer than it looked. Sam's house sat low against the road, the kind of place that seemed to grow out of the ground. They left the boards leaning by the side wall. Inside, the air was warmer. Finding the letter was easy. It was right where they left it. Sam set it on the table, edges yellowed, folds sharp as a held breath. Jamie carried the page to the doorway, held it where the light was clean. Outside, the board waited, nose catching a thin line of sun. He lifted the paper to the carve. Not touching, just close. Left curve higher, right curve tighter. A small notch where the lines met. The same, not just a shape. "And now we know," he said. Jamie nodded. Sam's voice was quiet. They were more than friends. Jamie looked up. The space between them felt smaller. Jamie lifted the old wooden board, held it under his arm, the mark brushing against his side. The road back to Jamie's was quiet, lined with grass bending in the wind. Jamie's great-uncle was still on the porch when they came through the gate. His eyes were far away, out underwater. Jamie leaned the board against the wall. Sam caught Jamie's eyes, a silent nod. Their fingers laced, not hidden, not hurried. Jamie's great-uncle's gaze shifted from the sea to the boys, to their joined hands. The kitchen smelled faintly of tea in the sea. Jamie's great-uncle moved slowly, measuring leaves into the pot. Jamie sat across from the window, Sam beside him. Steam began to rise from the kettle. Jamie's great-uncle glanced over his shoulder. "I see you two getting along," he said, the hint of a smile in his voice. "That's good to see, Jamie. Feels like it suits you here." Jamie felt heat in his face. "Maybe," he said softly. And Jamie's great-uncle sat down opposite them. Sam reached into his pocket. He set a folded paper on the table. Jamie's great-uncle's eyes dropped to it. The steam from the tea curled upwards, curling through the space between them. He didn't reach for it right away, just looked, breast pulled in. "What is this?" "In my great-granddad's things," Sam said. Jamie's great-uncle's thumb brushed the mark. Then he unfolded the paper, read in silence. The room seemed to shrink. Only the cattle tickling filled the air. Jamie leaned forward, voice low. I don't think he ever gave it to you. He stood, letter in hand, and walked into the living room. Jamie caught Sam's eyes, a small tilt of head. Let's go. They rose from the table. As they stepped into the hall, Sam glanced back. Great-uncle sat in the armchair, letter open on his knees, his gaze fixed on the page. Sam's eyes lingered, and the sound of the present began to thin. Jamie's great-uncle heard the boys climbing the stairs. Come on, Arthur. Laughter followed the words. Jamie and Sam blurred at the edges. The boards beneath their feet became a different summer. Now it was Arthur, and a much younger Edward, walking up those same stairs. They were still damp from the surf. Salt clung to their skin, hair darkened by seawater. Arthur grinned over his shoulder. Edward caught up and pressed a finger to his lips. They slowed only a little, feet soft on the steps, the air between them already charged with what they meant to do once the door closed upstairs. They slipped into Edward's room. Closing the door was the quietest click they could manage. Arthur's back hit the edge of the bed. Edward was already pulling at his shirt, laughing under his breath. In seconds, their tops were on the floor, bare skin warm from the climb upstairs, still carrying the salt from the sea. Arthur's hand rested at Edward's waist. His grin softened. You know what we should do? Low enough for only Edward to hear. Get a tattoo. Right here. On our waist? Arthur nodded. I love you. Edward's breast caught, half from the touch, half from the way Arthur was looking at him. They kissed again, harder this time. The kind of kiss that left no room for air, and no thoughts of stopping. Edward's hand slid down, finding Arthur's belt. Metal shifted, close loosening. The boards underfoot creaked softly as they moved toward the bed, pulling at each other's clothes. Mad was the one that had been building since the first wave that morning. Arthur's jeans were halfway down. Edward's hands on his hips, skin to skin now. Arthur's mouth found Edward's again. And that's when the door opened. I made sandwich. Edward's mother stood frozen, eyes wide, hands empty. The smell of bread and cheese spilled into the room was her shock. Arthur stepped back so fast he hit the bed frame. Edward reached for his shirt, yanking it up, the fabric twisting in his hands. Arthur grabbed for his trousers, clutching them to his waist. No one spoke. Only the sound of the last plate, spinning to a stop on the wooden floor. The boards creaked overhead. Another creak, and then a laugh. Only, the laughter weren't Arthur's anymore. Jamie's great-uncle blinked. The ceiling above him was the same. The sound was the same. But now it was Jamie and Sam, their feet moving across the boards, their voice muffled through the floor. His hand came up, covering his face. The first sob stayed in his chest. The second slipped out. Jamie closed the door behind them. The latch caught with a soft click. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The room felt smaller than it had that morning. Sam sat on the edge of the bed, turned the letter in his hands. Jamie stayed standing, watching the paper shift between his friend's finger. You okay? Jamie asked. Sam nodded once. Jamie moved closer. The bed dipped under their weight. The wind moved faintly through the window. Sam turned his head just enough to meet Jamie's eyes. Jamie glanced at the letter, then back to Sam. "You really think it was meant for him?" he asked. Sam nodded. "I do." Jamie's hand moved without him thinking, resting lightly over Sam's. Sam didn't pull away. His fingers turned to catch Jamie's. Then Sam's gaze dropped to Jamie's mouth. Just for a second. Jamie leaned in, the space between them, close with the softest brush of lips. Sam's breath caught. Jamie felt it, and kissed him again. The floorboard under the bed creaked softly as they shifted. In another time, in the same house, love like this had been a dangerous secret. Here and now, it was as simple as leaning in. That night, the house was quiet. Jamie lay in bed, half dreaming, when he heard it again. The faint groan of the attic floorboards. He pushed the blanket back, sat up, feet on the cold boards. Another step above him, and now not there. And another, and another. Jamie rose, took 2 paces toward the door, and stumped. For tonight, he let his great-uncle have his memory. Jamie's great-uncle's shadow moved across the attic beams. The air up here was cooler. He knelt by an old trunk, lifting the lid. Inside, a scattering of books, a scarf, a folded jumper. Beneath them, an envelope. Cream paper, edges yellowed. Mr. Edward Hargreaves and Miss Catherine Moore request the honor of your presence. Edward's thumb pressed against the embossed date. His jaw tightened. He set it aside. Next, a photograph. 2 boys in rolled-up trousers, shirts damp from the sea. A slip of black-edged paper lay beneath it. Arthur Bennett, funeral service. 12 September, 1965. And then a letter. Inside, a signature he had not seen in decades. Arthur. Jamie's great-uncle sat back on his heels. The first letter, the one Sam had brought, still in his pocket. He took it out, laid it on the attic floor. Beside it, he placed a 1 in the box. Same fold, same wave mark in the corner. But the rest, not the same. Different handwriting. His eyes went to the corner of the page, the signature, Arthur. Then he picked up the letter Sam had brought. "Didn't know you kept mine," he murmured. "Funny, it's found its way back to me." Then his thumb brushed the name of the letter lying on the floor. Arthur. I love you. In the quiet of the attic, 2 letters lay between past and present. One he had written, one he had received. The ears between them were filled with everything he could never say. Below, the sea moved as it always had. Above, the night held the house still. And in the space between, Edward kept Arthur close. This was Shoreline Secrets, Chapter 5, 2 Waves, 1 Tide. If you've been following Jamie, Sam, and Edward's story, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss Chapter 6. Until next time, we'll meet again where the waves touch the shore. Thank you.
Piece of land.